Lesson 21, timing. Timing is one of the key elements of every good photograph. Pressing the shutter release button at precisely the right moment makes the difference between a good photo and a mediocre one. In photography terms, this is what we call the decisive moment. The term the decisive moment was coined by famous French photographer Henri Cartier-Bresson. He was known as the father of photojournalism. And the term basically means that you take the photo at precisely the right moment when the action is at its peak. The action might be in the midst of a sports game, it could be of a child playing, it might be a sunset. Anything at all that you're photographing will have a decisive moment. Cartier-Bresson was a photojournalist, a street photographer, a documentary photographer. So most of what he was photographing had a very precise, very definite, well-defined, decisive moment. And to capture the decisive moment for this type of photography, you need to be very quick to respond at the right time. Choosing the best time to photograph a landscape, a seascape, or some architecture does involve choosing the best time, but doesn't include the need for speed. These types of photography require you to be patient. Often it's a matter of waiting for the light to be right, waiting for the sun to be in the right position in the sky. And it may remain just right for some period of time, but it still is important to wait for the best time, for that best moment to take your photograph. I've had feedback from many photographers that I've taught over the years that they're afraid of missing the decisive moment. They worry about not being quick enough to respond with their cameras. But in reality, there are very few great photos that are taken as a matter of reflex. Most of the time, the best photos are made by photographers who can anticipate the moment and be prepared for when that peak of action is going to happen. They find the best position to take the photo from, they set their cameras, they adjust the focal length of their lens and everything they need, so when the right moment occurs, they're ready to take their photos. Skillful anticipation is something that the best photographers do instinctively. They've learned how to predict when the most interesting action is going to happen, and they're ready for it. They've practiced it, they've observed carefully, and they've practiced it some more. So when you come to photograph a particular subject for the first time, it pays just to observe for a while first without actually trying to take photos. Look at what's happening and try to predict when the most interesting action is going to occur. When will that decisive moment happen? I love going to Hmong New Year celebrations. The Hmong people are one of the many ethnic minorities here in Southeast Asia, and they celebrate New Year with flair and style. And the very first time I photographed box cart racing was at one of these events. I walked around and took a few photos and then chose a few different spots that I thought would give me the best vantage points for catching the action. I noticed there was one place on the downhill track that racers tended to crash, so that's where I started. Then I wanted some fast action, so I set up closer to the starting ramp where they were coming down fast. Sometimes there is some luck in catching the best action, but if you're not prepared, and in this case if I'd not been prepared, I certainly would have missed it. By concentrating on your subject and observing the surroundings, this will give you a better idea and you'll be able to anticipate when the most interesting action is likely to happen. Learning to anticipate the decisive moment is one of the key skills that you need to develop as a photographer. Lesson 21, practical exercise, timing. This exercise will help you to learn to observe and anticipate the best time to take your photos. Go to a busy place if you can, somewhere like a street market or an event where there's plenty of action, or somewhere that there's just a little bit of action. I'm going to have a group of friends come around soon to help us finish our pizza oven, so that's going to be the focus of my exercise. And when you get to your chosen location, don't take your camera out of your bag immediately. Just pause before you start taking photos and observe what's happening at the place, in the surroundings that you want to take photographs. Have a look for the movement of people or the movement of vehicles or any sort of activity that's going on. In particular, look for things that are repetitious. Look for things that you'll be able to anticipate when the best moment to take your photo is, and concentrate a bit on these. And then, as you start taking photos, try and anticipate when the best moment, when's the decisive moment, when's it going to be the peak of the action that you've chosen to photograph. And then time your photos to catch those moments. And I want you to leave your camera set to single exposure mode, not on burst mode. Avoid using burst mode for this because I want you to practice timing your individual photos just right. This will help you get a better eye for it and a better understanding of when that decisive moment is. Take as much time as you can for this exercise. Getting the timing right takes practice. You've got to do it repetitively. So being in the same place and taking a whole series of photos, you'll get more accustomed to when to take your photos. And as you practice doing this, you'll get sharper, you'll get more accurate, and you'll be taking fewer photos because you'll be able to predict when that right moment is. Don't expect to go out and take a whole bunch of great photos, but aim to just get one or two where you've got the timing bang on. And then when you've loaded your photos to your computer, observe them, look between one photo and the next and look at the ones, pick the ones out that your timing is the best and compare them with others and look at how much stronger the photos are where you've timed them well than the ones where your timing was not so precise. And think of how you can improve and keep practicing. And don't forget to save 2 or 3 of your best photos to your favorites folder. The main points in this lesson are: the decisive moment is precisely the right time to take a photo. It may be a matter of responding quickly or waiting patiently for that moment. Observing both your subject and your surroundings will help you choose the decisive moment. Practice this to improve your photography. Observe your subject before you bring your camera to your eye. Anticipate when the most interesting time to press the shutter release button will be.